Hi, it's Eric. We're going to be talking about something different today. What do you think it's going to be? If you guess bezels, you're right. I had to pick the loudest one I could find to do that with. So bezels. And I figured I'd do a short video on bezels specifically because I hear so much now with bezels. And, about if it's a great bezel, it's not a great bezel, it's got back play, it's not smooth, all of these different types of things. And to be honest with you, if you look at them and the way they're constructed, it's apples to oranges. Really, they're very different. So it's people's preference. I know that probably the greatest number of people love Tudor 60 click, and I do too. I think it's wonderful. I think it's better than Rolex for sure. I just love the 60 click, and I love that it's a ball bearing, but it's important to know that it's a ball bearing. So when you are adjusting it, you can actually feel it clicking and forcing you into the next click with the ball bearing. The same thing with the Rolex Submariner at 120 click, but with a ball bearing. And people automatically assume that's super lux. They feel that beautiful rotation with the ball bearing at the 120 click, and that's like ultra luxury to them. And the 60, some people don't like it as much as the Rolex because it's 60 instead of 120. For me, it makes sense. It's a minute. I don't need to time 30 seconds. I don't need a 120 click bezel. I need a 60 click bezel. So that's one thing. But there's more than that. There's some people that I've seen review bezels, and they've said that they're absolute garbage. And I couldn't disagree with them more. So you have other watches. The one I just showed you is Breitling Super Ocean, and it's a click spring, and it's a really sturdy click spring. It is loud. I mean, it's loud. And this is a new watch, but it's a loud click spring, and that's what it is. It's a click spring. So really, I found that there's probably three areas that watch bezels fall into. And of course, I'm talking about rotation dive watches. I found there's the ball bearing area, which is really owned by Tudor. And I believe that Damasco also has a ceramic ball bearing that I hear is outrageous action. I haven't felt it, but I heard it's amazing. Then you have the click spring, like I just showed you. And some of the click springs are very stiff. Some aren't, so they're quieter. So you're going to get those two variations depending on the click spring. Then you have some that are a click spring with a gasket or a rubber O-ring. So those are the ones that I like. And actually, it just happens to me. The Seiko Marinemaster. It's amazing. To me, it's amazing. It's smooth, yet it has the detents, So we'll take a look at that. I'll take a closer look. But for me, it falls into those three families. I know there's a lot more, but generally it's the ball bearing. It's a click spring. Sometimes it's a double click spring. So you're getting click, 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 click. And sometimes if you look at the Seikos, the Marinemasters, it is a click spring, but it's mostly friction that puts that bezel in place. So it's very smooth and almost a friction bezel. And I know that you may or may not know this, but initially diving bezels were friction only. There was just friction. It wasn't click springs, it wasn't ball bearings, and I believe it was Rolex. So it was just being held down. And I believe that Benris has a watch right now that's just friction. So when you look at the Marinemaster, it actually does have friction with a click spring. And I absolutely love that. That's my favorite. But it's everybody's preference. There is no best bezel, if you ask my opinion, but I hear it all the time. So I wanted to go into it really quickly and just show you some things close up. Thanks. So let's talk bezels, and specifically bezel action. This is not about having a ceramic bezel, having, a stainless steel bezel, or anything about that cosmetic. This is about the actual action of the bezel. So I put it in three different categories. One category being the most, I would say, widely accepted, and I'll show you with this Breitling Super Ocean. It's 120 click, and it's just a click spring. So there are notches under this bezel, and there's a spring sticking up. And depending on how high that spring is sticking up is dependent on how loud it's going to be. This is 120 click. And it's very finite as well. To line up is easy. Along the same lines, this Oris, this is an Oris Diver 65 with a 400 caliber. It's a special edition. Same thing. spring, but it's just a little easier to turn, but also really easy to line up if you want. It's just the way it works. Then you have what everybody's crazy about right now, and for good reason, is a Tudor Black Bay 58. This happens to be the 925, but the Black Bay 58s are all the same. They have a ball bearing inside, and it's 60 clicks. So it's 60 clicks. And it really forces you to the next detent. It's just a really wonderful, positive feeling and very high-end feeling to it. There's no mistaking what you're doing with it and where you're going to end up with it. And the same thing with the father of it. The Rolex Submariner is also a ball bearing. And the same thing, you can just line it up easily. And it has a, I guess people are identifying this with luxury, you know, but then you have hybrids out there that are kind of different. This is a Marinemaster Ninja 300, and this has a click spring, but also it has an O-ring underneath. So it's also about friction. What you may not know is the very first bezels that were out, actually, I believe that diving bezel was from Rolex, and it was just friction. There was no clicks. It was just how tightened down it was and turning. So this is very much about friction and a click spring. So it glides. It's quieter, and it glides. But it's more about placing it with the friction, not the detent. And I hear people complain about these all the time, and I absolutely love them. So, you know, right along those lines, this is the Marinemaster 300. This happens to be my favorite. They're apples to oranges. I mean, everybody's going to like something different. For me, this is what I like. So there's a rubber O-ring in there and a click spring. It's very much about friction. And that's really what you're placing it with, and also the click spring. So it makes sure you can't go backwards. That's basically it when it's a unidirectional bezel. So those are the three, I would say, most prevalent bezels out there, and it's up to you to choose. You know, it's apples, oranges, bananas. There's just two total. There are many different ones, but those three are pretty prevalent. And I know people go, "Oh, you know, this bezel is just the best bezel action, the Rolex Submariner." It's different. It's different. It's just a different bezel. Sure, it sounds great, but it's a different bezel. So thanks so much, and let's go back up top. So in closing, that's it for bezels. You know, there's an awful lot to say about bezels. I watched a really good YouTube video. I think it was Watchfinder or something. And it was a guy who went through everything to do with bezels. But it wasn't just diving bezels or rotating bezels. It was fluted bezels, all those type of things. But I find, you know, that there are a lot of different schools of thought of what they think is best. So it's like apples to oranges to bananas. It's just very different, and it's whatever your preference is. I was a diehard Tudor guy. I mean, diehard 60 click. So the bezel with a ball bearing, that was me. There was nothing I thought I was ever going to find that was better. I just got a Marinemaster 300, and man, that thing is beautiful. It just glides and it has a light click. I think it's beautiful. I love it. So it's a personal taste thing. Anyway, so I hope you got something out of it. Thank you so much. Please like and subscribe.